Radical. Hey, I'm doing it. Yep, that's the correct microphone. Always good to check. Hi, Dom.
Are you recording?
I didn't say, because every single other time I've gone, and I'm recording. And as I say that, you're like, hi, Kate. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. Hi, Dom, I'm recording. I'm recording now.
I'm recording too. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Dom. How you going?
It's funny. I use the hi, Kate, hi, Dom as our timing anchor points, so I know exactly how to sync up our audio.
Fantastic. So this one is going to be nearly impossible for you to do.
It's okay. I mean, it makes it really interesting. And you and I, we're very, what's the word? We're very creative. We're
Loosey-goosey.
Loosey-goosey. Shoot from the hip, pow, pow.
Yeah.
But the
flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah, if you're wearing them.
Yeah,
I hope some of our listeners are actually not wearing pants.
Same. If you're somewhere where you can take them off and you feel like it, do it.
Yeah, with that.
It's very chilly here in Melbourne today. So yeah. Be somewhere where you can do it. You're allowed. If you are currently at a workplace, don't do it. Maybe.
No. Around children, zip it up.
Don't do it. Zip it up. Just zip it up. Dom.
Kate.
We saw each other in human form on Saturday night, did we not?
We did, and I think our audience probably got a little sneak peek of it on our socials if you were watching.
Correctamundo. So if you did check our socials, we did put up a little story, and we were in the same vicinity as each other. It was very exciting. We went and visited a concert. Is that what you call it? Visiting a concert? Is that what the kids call it? And yes, William Martin Joel was playing, otherwise known as Billy Joel. He's my favorite artiste, and I had the time of my life. It was unbelievable, and I'm so glad you were there to experience that, Dominic.
Yeah, we were celebrating BJ Day because we're BJ fans.
Day. Huge BJ fans. I'm the biggest BJ fan, I think.
I think you are.
Yeah, maybe.
But yes, Kate was in such fine form, folks. I can't really quite describe it. Actually, I can. You know that episode where we did the possession of Anna Eklund? Think of that level of possession, but instead of the devil, it was Uptown Girl. Fire,
River of Dreams.
River of Dreams.
We didn't start the fire. Scenes from an Italian restaurant really got me on another level.
Yeah. And Kate
I've never worked my quads so hard.
Yeah.
I just, oh my God, I was sweating like I've never sweated in my life. I was saving up all my sweat for that moment. It's just like I hopped in the pool and then out again and kept on dancing.
Yeah, the spirit had definitely filled Kate, and it was quite an experience. And he did something like 26 songs or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And he's 900 years old, give or take. So that was pretty impressive.
It was so beautiful. So massive thank you. At least I got to say massive thank you to my mum and dad for getting my sister and I tickets, and a thank you to your mum, Kate, and you too for not introducing me to the world of Billy Joel, but reminding me that I had a love and a connection to Billy Joel that probably every human does, and they just don't realize.
Yeah, exactly right. He's one of those artists for sure. But I had the best time, and, I was thinking afterwards, I hope I didn't annoy people with my dancing and stuff. And then I thought, fuck them. I had the best time, and if anyone was annoyed, move away from me. We were at a ginormous stadium. Just go somewhere else. I was having such a good time.
I did manage to capture some very good footage of Kate's dance moves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can put it on. No, you can do it. I will put some up. And I will find some good cuts so people can truly appreciate. I did like a few sections, which it's just truly possessed.
It's the best. It brings me so much joy, Kate.
I'm so happy.
I wish
Oh,
everyone danced like that. It was pretty much that that cliche saying, "Dance as if nobody's watching," and Kate was just
correct.
she was doing it.
I really was. I was live, laughing, and loving all at once.
All right, Kate. Well, that's
Now,
probably
Dom,
enough of Billy Joel Day.
the BJ. Yeah, I know. BJ Day. Do we have any housekeeping?
Apart from the usual, it's just check out our socials, check out our Patreon. Kate and I do have now 2 kind of special little episodes in the works. We're being invited to another podcast, so stay tuned for those details and when that will be coming out. And we will also be having a special guest as one of our first episodes in 2023, which means, Kate, we've been live in 3 separate years. We've been in 2021, 2022, and we would have been recording and releasing in 2023. That's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's very cool. I love it. Great work.
Yeah, so that's housekeeping, but
housekeeping. Excellent.
Ding dong.
Ding dong. Dom, I have a story for you today. Do you know that? Do you believe it?
I have a feeling that you do, and that's why we're just whipping through the shit and getting straight to business.
You got to whip the shit, and now we're business time. And
Don't know if you saw that, folks.
I always love a visual joke on an audio format. Dom was whipping his shit. You can think of that what you will. All right. Now, you threw down the gauntlet last week. And by that, I mean, you just said, Kate, we'll do a story next week. And so I took that as a personal attack. But we changed formats a little bit. Last week, you did a story which had a couple of little stories in it. And that's usually my forte. Yeah. And you would normally do a story which is about one thing.
Yeah.
Today, I am doing a story about one thing.
One mega story.
Exciting. Mega story. Sorry, it was just thundering outside and it frightened me because I was just reading my story. Okay,
so no. Do you know what that was, Kate? That was Lizzie Truss ripping a fart in the waiting room.
Lizzie, Dal, stop it. No, we're recording. No, God.
We'll get us some Tums.
We need to give her another job. Yeah, get us some Tums. We need to get her another job. Because she can't just hang around in the bloody foyer all day, okay? She needs something to do. She needs some stimulation.
All right, so when she gets nervous.
Exactly. So today I am going to tell you a story. Quite literally, I'm going to read a story, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history. We are going to be reading and learning and having a great time with the Headless Horseman. Welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, what a great Christmas one.
Yeah, it worked with we've just had Halloween, moving into we've had Thanksgiving and it's Christmas and it's that time of year. I thought it fit quite well, but also I am way behind the 8 ball in life. I am learning with this podcast, and there's a lot of topics and people and things that I have never heard of, and then I'll mention them and the 80% of the room will be like, oh yeah, I know that story. I've heard of that. I've done that. And I don't know about it. So this is one of those ones where I am aware of a character by the name of the Headless Horseman, but don't know much about it. So I thought, if I don't know anything about it, maybe there is another person in the planet who listens to us and doesn't know either. Or maybe you know a little bit about it and you want to know more, or maybe you know heaps about it and you're going to be really bored. But that's okay because, we might tell some jokes around in the mix and you can just have a nice time with us. So here is going to be a cool epi about the Headless Horseman. I will always start you off with a phobia. Won't I, Dom?
Yes. And I'm starting to learn from your amazing guidance here, Kate, because I'm going to start introducing phobias into my stories too, because it should be just part and parcel of what we do at Shit and Bricks. So thank you for that.
It's cool. Oh, you're welcome. I just find it interesting. And that is another thing, I'm loving my phobias. I'm loving my etymology. So starting with a phobia, I had a bit of a Google and I tried to work out if there was a term that describes a fear of beheading or decapitation. Now, this is a common fear, which
Sure.
is shared by many human beings. It rarely, this is a quote from somebody that I got online where they were just explaining a little bit about phobias. And it says, look, this particular fear rarely rises to a pathological level wherein it impacts a person's ability to function. So there aren't that many people who have an irrational fear of not wanting to get your head cut off. That is quite rational. Nobody particularly wants that. So there's not a phobia per se. So this is a bit of a curious one.
Yeah.
Exactly. However, there would be a term that appears to lie somewhere between death anxiety and a fear of amputation, which is I practice this so much and I stuffed it up. Apotemnophobia.
Okay.
That's a fear of amputation. So
Apotemnophobia.
Apotemnophobia. Yes.
Jeez.
So there you go. So it fits somewhere in between that and death. So that makes sense. But what else I read on this website was somebody asked the question, which brings me to my etymology interest. Yeah. Why is the act of decapitation referred to as beheading instead of deheading? And why is it not becapitation? Obviously, I was fascinated by this. So let me tell you why. Do you want to know why?
We're not going to sleep until we know the answer.
You have to know. That's it. I've just planted the seed. So behead is Germanic in origin. The prefix be in German and earlier English has many meanings, and one of them is off. So to behead is English with Germanic roots, to take someone's head off.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Decapitation is from Latin. The prefix de in Latin means several things, and remove is one of them. Caput in Latin means head. So decapitation is like latent way of saying in English to take someone's head off. So we don't say becapitate. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I'm doing that again. We don't say becapitate because as a general rule, we use the same language roots for prefixes and the main elements of the words we build. There you go.
I do kind of like the idea of it being decaput, like kaput. I love that word.
Yeah,
just
same.
Decaput.
Yeah,
decapitated.
I'm sure that's not. I'm sure decapitated. I'm sure that caput is not how it would be said in Latin, but it sounds much better. Decaput.
Yeah.
Decapitation. Oh, there you go. That's just with a really bad accent.
It's your Google voice accent. Every time Kate, I'm sure folks at home, you've probably noticed every time Kate finds a word or a name that she wants to learn how to say, she is amazing. She's like a lyrebird. She can re-say exactly how Google says it. Like, what was that? Josephine Kopka? Juliana Kopka?
Juliana Kopka. That's it. Exactly the same.
You mimic it perfectly. So anyway, I love it.
Amazing. So there you go. That's why you say decapitate, not becapitate, and that's why you say beheading instead of deheading. So pop that up your etymology. All right. Now we're past those parts of our phobias and our etymologies. Let me begin the tale.
Okay.
Every year, I just had to cough at the very start. That was not a strong start. Okay. Every year when the green leaves turn bright orange and pumpkins appear on our doorsteps, Washington Irving's classic ghost story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, is retold. The beloved American legend follows the tale of Ichabod Crane, a superstitious schoolteacher who finds himself in the haunted town of Sleepy Hollow. Now, I would like to share with our listeners a shortened version of the original story. So I want to actually tell the original Washington Irving story. However, the original one, it's super long and it was written in the 1800s. So the language is a little bit tricky. So I have found a different version. But to give you a bit of a sense of the language, This is an example of one of the sentences from the original. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest. And like the lion bold, which Wilhelm so magnanimously the lamb did hold, he would sit with a child on one knee and rock a cradle with his foot for whole 1 hours together. That's just one sentence.
Jesus.
So I would be in strife if I tried to read 41 pages of that, which is how long it goes. So what I did
want to be a smoker
was I found another version. Oh, God, I wouldn't make it. Now, I did find another version, which is from a website that is designed to teach people how to read English. So I thought that was better as a version to share with you all today. It does tell the story in the same sense. It's got the same kind of characters and things. So settle in, Dom. Let me tell you the story of Sleepy Hollow. I don't know why I think this is so funny. What a day. The valley known as Sleepy Hollow hides from the world in the high hills of New York State. There are many stories told about the Quiet Valley, but the story that people believe most is about a man who rides a horse at night. The stories say the man died many years ago during the American Revolutionary War. His head was shot off with a cannon. Every night he rises from his burial place, jumps on his horse, and rides through the valley looking for his lost head. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know why I find it so funny. Okay.
No, but if you put it just that way, it's kind of
I know.
Oh, shit.
That's it. You're like, oh, okay.
At least it's not like the armless horseman, or it's like, the hipless horseman or something other really.
That's it. The footless horseman or something that hobbles into town. Has anybody seen my foot? Oh, okay, I'll try again tomorrow.
This is a size 13. I swore I was a size 9.
Okay. Now, near Sleepy Hollow is a village called Tarrytown. Holy shit.
She
I'm
lost
so
it,
sorry.
folks. Tarrytown.
It was settled many years ago by people from Holland. Holy shit. I'm so sorry.
Imagine these Dutch bastards.
I'm not entirely sure what's making me laugh so much, but I'm having a good time, so I guess that's good. Now, the village had a small school and one teacher named Ichabod Crane. Now, Ichabod Crane was a good name for him because he looked like a tall bird. He was tall and thin, just like a crane. His shoulders were small, joined by 2 long arms. His head was small too, and it was flat on the top. He had big ears and large, glassy green eyes and a long nose. So he sounds like a bit of a catch, to be perfectly frank. Now, Ichabod did not make much money as a teacher, and although he was tall and thin, he ate like a fat man. To help him pay for his food, he earned extra money teaching young people to sing. Every Sunday after church, Ichabod taught singing. Among the ladies Ichabod taught was one Katrina Van Tassel.
Katrina in some clogs and tassels on her titties just going around. Oh, goodness. At least she could rest her sheet music on Ichabod Crane's head because it's flashed.
It's going to be my drag name. Okay. Now, Katrina was the only daughter of a rich Dutch farmer. She was a girl in bloom, much like a round red rosy apple. Ichabod had a soft and foolish heart for the ladies and soon found himself interested in Miss Van Tassel. Ichabod's eyes... We're never going to get through this episode. I'm so sorry. Okay. Ichabod's eyes opened wide when he saw the riches of Katrina's farm. Oh, I'm so sorry, listeners.
I'm not. This is great.
Oh, my God. Okay. the miles of apple trees and wheat fields and hundreds of fat farm animals, he saw himself as a master of the Van Tassel farm with Katrina as his wife. But there were so many problems blocking the road to Katrina's heart. One was a strong young man named...
Oh, no. What was his name, Kate?
His name's Brom Van Brunt.
Brom Van Bromson.
Brom Van Brunt. Brom
Okay.
Van Brunt. Now, he was a hero to all the young ladies. His shoulders were big, his back was wide, and his hair was short and curly. He always won the horse races in Tarrytown, and he earned heaps of prizes. And Brom was never seen without a horse. Now, sometimes late at night, Brom and his friends would rush through town shouting loudly from the backs of their horses. Tired old ladies would awaken from their sleep and say, "Why, there goes Brom Van Brunt leading his wild group again." Bloody Brom. Now, such was the enemy Ichabod had to defeat for Katrina's heart. So, to recap for those of you who have no idea what's going on because I've lost the plot so many times, Ichabod's the teacher. He loves Katrina. But Katrina is like, "Oh, I fancy Brom because he's so handsome and wild boy. We like him." Now, stronger and wiser men would not have tried to win Katrina's heart, but Ichabod had a plan. He could not fight his enemy in the open, so he did it silently and secretly. He made many visits to Katrina's farm, and he made her think that he was helping her to sing better. Isn't he wily? So he's going to visit Katrina and behind everybody's backs. Now, time passed, and the town people thought that Ichabod was winning. Brom's horse was never seen at Katrina's house on Sunday nights anymore. One day in autumn, Ichabod was asked to come to a big party at the Van Tassel home. He dressed in his best clothes. A farmer loaned him an old horse for the long trip to the party. The house was filled with farmers and their wives, red-faced daughters, and clean-washed sons. That's how we like our sons. The tables were filled with different things to eat, and wine filled many glasses. Brom Van Brunt rode to the party on his fastest horse called Daredevil. All the young ladies smiled happily when they saw him. Soon, music filled the rooms and everyone began to dance and sing. Ichabod was happy dancing with Katrina as Brom looked at them with a jealous heart. The night passed, the music stopped, and young people sat together to tell stories about the Revolutionary War. Ooh, cool. Soon, stories about Sleepy Hollow were told. The most feared story was about the rider looking for his lost head. One farmer told how he raced the headless man on a horse. The farmer ran his horse faster and faster. The horseman followed over a bush and stone until they came to the end of the valley. There, the headless horseman suddenly stopped. Gone were his clothes and his skin. All that was left was a man with white bones shining in the moonlight. The stories ended, and the time came to leave the party. Ichabod seemed very happy until he said goodnight to Katrina. Was she ending their romance? He left feeling very sad. Had Katrina been seeing Ichabod just to make Brom Van Brunt jealous so he would marry her? Well, Ichabod began his long ride home on the hills that surrounded Tarrytown. He'd never felt so lonely in his life. He began to whistle as he came close to the tree where a man had been killed years ago by rebels. He thought he saw something white move in the tree, but no, it was only the moonlight shining and moving on the tree. Then he heard a noise. His body shook. He kicked his horse faster. The old horse tried to run, but almost fell in the river. Ichabod hit the horse again. The horse ran fast and suddenly stopped, almost throwing Ichabod forward to the ground. There, in the dark woods on the side of the river, where the bushes grew low, stood an ugly thing. Big and black, it did not move, but it seemed ready to jump like a giant monster. Ichabod's hair stood straight up. It was too late to run, and in his fear, he did the only thing he could. His shaking voice broke the silent valley. "Who are you?" The thing did not answer. Ichabod asked again, still no answer. Ichabod's old horse began to move forward. The black thing began to move along the side of Ichabod's horse in the dark. Ichabod made his horse run faster. The black thing moved with them. Side by side, they moved slowly at first, and not a word was said. Ichabod felt his heart sink. Up the hill, they moved above the shadow of the trees, and for a moment the moon shone down, and to Ichabod's horror, he saw it was a horse, and it had a rider. but the rider's head was not on his body. It was in front of him, resting on the horse. Ichabod kicked and hit his horse with all his power. Away they rushed through the bushes and trees across the valley of Sleepy Hollow. Up ahead was the old church bridge where the Headless Horseman stops and returns to his burial place. If only I can get there first, I'm safe, thought Ichabod. He kicked his horse again. The horse jumped on the bridge and raced over it like the sound of thunder. Ichabod looked back to see if the headless man had stopped. He saw the man pick up his head and throw it with a powerful force. The head hit Ichabod in the face and knocked him off the horse to the dirt below. They found Ichabod's horse the next day, peacefully eating grass, but they could not find Ichabod. They walked all across the valley. They saw footmarks of Ichabod's horse as it had raced through the valley. They even found Ichabod's old hat in the dust near the bridge. But they did not find Ichabod. The only thing that they found was lying near was Ichabod's hat. It was the broken pieces. Wait, I'm going to do that sentence again. The only other thing they found that was lying near Ichabod's hat was the broken pieces of a round orange pumpkin. The townspeople talked about Ichabod for many weeks. They remembered the frightening stories of the valley and finally came to believe that the Headless Horseman had carried him away. Much later, an old farmer returned from a visit to New York City. He said he was sure he saw Ichabod there. He thought Ichabod silently left Sleepy Hollow because he lost Katrina. As for Katrina, her mother and father gave her a big wedding when she married Brom Van Brunt. Many people who went to the wedding saw that Brom smiled whenever Ichabod's name was spoken, and they wonder why he laughed out loud when anyone talked about the broken orange pumpkin found lying near Ichabod's old dusty hat. Full stop. Oh. So that's the story. That's the original story of the Sleepy Hollow. Obviously a very truncated version.
Yeah.
And designed to help people learn how to read English and speak English better. I will not be teaching anybody how to do that anytime soon. Thank you for staying with me. I managed to get my faculties together.
I was trying so hard not to interject with anything funny, which is actually normally not what we do. But
no, but I just needed to hold it together. I don't know. Oh, that was so many things were tickling my fancy. So, but I've put my fancy away now. It can't be tickled. And that is, that's the sort of original story. So I wasn't aware of that because I am super aware of the movie Sleepy Hollow, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. But yeah, so that's kind of what I had in my mind. But that gives you an idea of, what happens in the tale. Now, what I liked to in reading this is then looking into where that story came from. So here's a bit of history for you. Would you like some history, Dominic?
I would love some history or hersery.
Let's do it. Hersery, theresery. Let's do it. While the legend is a staple in American folklore, its inspiration for this tale is global. Now, Washington Irving, his story, is born out of a mixture of foreign lore, local history, and a bit of the uncanny. The myth of the Headless Horseman, like much folklore, it's shared across lots of cultures. So there's lots of iterations of this, and a lot of them are from Scandinavia, Northern Europe, but also there's stories that were released later in the 1800s, which are from Texas as well, so American folklore. Yeah. So, for example, a Celtic tradition, there is the legend of the Dullahan. I'm sure I'm saying that incorrectly, but that's okay. That's a headless demon who rides about on a black horse. And in the Arthurian tale, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a knight of Camelot beheads a green giant after he's challenged, and then he sees that creature ride off with his head still bleeding. So he's like, bye. Now, bye, you got me head, but I guess I can sell all my hats now.
Okay. Wilkinson, where did that come from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just having so many visions right now. I think, I might just need to adjust the meds. Okay, now, most famous perhaps of this folklore are the tales of the Wild Huntsman or the Wilde Jäger by German poet Gottfried August Berger and the German fairy tales of writer Johann Karl Morse House, which depict ghostly riders. Okay, so those are the Wild Huntsman. Whilst it's a poem, I was like, hey, maybe I can read some of that poem. It's like 30 pages, so I won't do that today. But if you would like to read those, you are welcome to. The Wild Huntsman, available online, as is the Origi-Dig story by Washington Irving of Sleepy Hollow. So you can go ahead and read both of those if you like. Now, Washington Irving was well-read and well-bred. So he would have probably... Sorry, I just got Dom real good. He was just about to take a sip of water too. Now, he was well-read and well-bred, and he probably would have been exposed to these poems and to the tales and the stories and things. So it's not as if he grew up in a place where he wasn't, exposed to all of these stories. So he's getting some inspiration from different places.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Now, he, went on a European tour, and then subsequently he wrote a collection of short stories, which is called the Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, and that included the legend of Sleepy Hollow. So people think, yes, he's probably inspired by that, but people believe that he might have found inspiration a bit closer to home, so in the States. A popular myth that followed the American Revolution was the story of a headless Hessian soldier. Hessians were German troops called upon to aid in Britain's fight against the American colonists, and one particular Hessian was reportedly decapitated by a cannonball during the Battle of White Plains in 1776. So I mentioned that earlier with our little story. As the story goes, the corpse of the beheaded Hessian was buried soon after his death at the Old Dutch Church in Sleepy Hollow, near the small village of Tarrytown. It was believed that the Hessian would arise at night in search of his head, and anyone who was ill-fated enough to come across the apparition was condemned to death.
Yeah.
So, while the skeptics of the supernatural, Dominic, could argue against the existence of the Headless Horseman, historical records show, according to the New York Historical Society, that there actually was a real decapitated Hessian soldier.
Yeah.
There's a 1798 memoir that Major General William Heath wrote. A shot from the American cannon at this place in White Plains took off the head of a Hessian artilleryman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't mean he's waking up at night to try and find his head, but I like the idea that that is legit, that they didn't just make up that story. I think that's cool. Now, another soldier, Anthony Maxwell, is said to have witnessed the unfortunate death firsthand and talked about it for years after, according to the book Once Upon a Time in the American Revolution. That's a page turner. The haunting tale of the headless Hessian soldier was well known in the Northeast. Coincidentally, about 10 miles from White Plains, New York, where the gruesome death is said to have happened, a teenage boy named Washington Irving was living with his friend in the small village of Tarrytown.
Oh.
So he's around during that time, not during the time it happened, but certainly, they're talking about this years after it happened. It would have been printed somewhere, talked about somewhere. So, they believe that that's where he's getting his inspo from.
And, for those listeners out there that are fortunate enough to be young.
God, I wonder what that's like. My knees hurt just thinking about it.
I know, but remember, this is a time when there wasn't another Marvel movie. There wasn't podcasts. There wasn't latest albums. Like, the way that art and things and tales were told, it's all through that, like, generational storytelling.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that these sorts of urban legend type things come from such a strong place of truth and get told and told again and again at a pub or whatever, and then look what it ends up being.
Yep, absolutely. Now, in Irving's earlier years, so when he was 15, he left his native home of New York and he went north to Tarrytown, where he lived with his friend James Paulding. But that wasn't a regular house visit. Around that time in 1798, New York City was gripped by yellow fever, and it made its way from Philadelphia, where it had killed thousands of people. Now, I knew that that's a mosquito disease, but I didn't know what it did, and so I looked it up. So for those of you that don't know, yellow fever is a serious disease which is caused by being bitten by a mosquito that's infected by a virus. Now, it can cause severe illness with bleeding from the organs. Blech. It's called yellow fever because sometimes it makes you jaundice, so it makes your skin turn yellow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a bit awkward. Yeah. And it said on the thing too, it's like if your organs are bleeding, you're probably past the point where you're okay. Yeah. So just keep an eye out for those simmies.
Like that symptom of death from last week. It's like,
correct.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you've died, then you've definitely been bitten by that spider. So, okay, cool. Now, Washington Irving's family was among those wealthy enough to leave the city and find refuge elsewhere. So they escaped to the fresh countryside of Hudson Valley, where it is clear from Irving's writing that he adored the idyllic pastoral setting and the eerie feelings inspired by its quaint colonial Dutch architecture. Irving was particularly mesmerized by the Catskill Mountains, which he describes as having a witching effect on his imagination. That infatuation greatly influenced Irving's creation of the legend of Sleepy Hollow in a number of ways. Besides having his fictional Sleepy Hollow village modeled off a real town in North Tarrytown where he lived, he also enjoyed naming and loosely basing his characters on real people.
Yeah.
So... the protagonist in Irving's Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod Crane. I also realized earlier too, I'd love to go through this episode and count how many times I said Ichabod in that story.
It is a very satisfying word to say.
It is. I like it. Ichabod. I love it. Now, yes, that protagonist, who one might have mistaken for some kind of scarecrow eloped from a cornfield, in quotation marks, is said to have been inspired by Jesse Merwin, who was a mutual friend, the author shared. Jesse Merwin, a mutual friend the author shared with Martin Van Buren, who later became America's 8th president.
Yep.
I thought that was fascinating. Merwin was a teacher from upstate New York who kept Irving company during his stay in Kinderhook in 1809. Others claim, as reported by the New York Times, that the bookish school teacher was inspired by Samuel Youngs, a lieutenant from Tarrytown who was friends with the Van Tassel family, who also inspired Irving and appeared by name in the folktale. It's likely that Ichabod Crane's character was a composition of both of those people. Now, Katrina Van Tassel, Ichabod Crane's unrequited love interest, was also presumably based on someone that Irving knew well, described rather excessively by Irving as plump as a partridge and ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked. Van Tassel is believed to be loosely inspired by Eleanor Van Tassel Brush. I wonder why you would think that. And perhaps by other women he'd known. Yeah, I wonder how Katrina Van Tassel was inspired by Eleanor Van Tassel Brush. It's a stretch. I couldn't possibly guess.
Yeah, imagine being friends, though, with him at the time and going, oh, I'm immortalized in this Sleepy Hollow book. Like,
yeah,
that so reminds me of that movie, Rumor Has It, with Jennifer Aniston and Shirley MacLaine and stuff. And it's like, oh, here's this old story. It's made into a movie. It's a book. It can't possibly be about anyone real. And then it turns out it's, I don't want to ruin it. But
that is a good movie, though. And that's peak. It's Kevin Costner, right?
Yeah.
That is peak Costner. He's so handsome.
But it gives me that same sort of flavor, Kate. It's like this story is so clearly based off of his life and his sphere of people and things like that. Imagine being from that time and going, hey, my plump grandmother, Eleanor, inspired Katrina Van Tassel.
Yeah. And it goes on to be in so many different forms of media and, pop culture. I love it. Now, in the book as well, which people have noted, or the story rather, there is also a plague that riddles the small town. So, that's kind of like the yellow fever, to make sense. Yeah. Now, in 1817, Washington Irving's family business went bankrupt following the British-American War of 1812. Now, whilst Irving had a respectable reputation as a writer, there were no real job prospects left for him in America. So he left New York and he went to Birmingham, England, where his sister Sarah and her husband Henry were already residing. It was here that Irving, plagued by writer's block since the unexpected success of his first book, A History of New York from the Beginning of the World to the End of the Dutch Dynasty. Oh, what a title, rolls off the tongue. Now, he was struck with renewed inspiration to write in England, which is great. So he had a conversation with his brother-in-law, and then he was thinking about times in Hudson Valley, and then he was thinking about, the community's Dutch past and local law. So he's like, I'm going to write a manuscript. So he does that, and then he basically stays up for a long, long time. And then his sister and his brother-in-law, they get up and they're getting ready for breakfast. And then Washington was like, I've got to read you this. It's good. I'm going to call it the sketchbook. So he starts to read that stuff to them. And the collection of essays was issued serially. Ooh, that's a tricky word to say. Serially.
Yep.
Throughout 1819 and 1820 under Irving's preferred pseudonym, Geoffrey Crayon. I love that name. Its later publication included the short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So the sketchbook receives rave reviews following its first publication, which included the 5 essays that he wrote, and one of them being Sleepy Hollow. One of the first book reviews that came out was from Irving's former publishing colleague, with whom Irving had shared a very intimate and complicated relationship over the years.
Ooh.
But the anonymous review of the book, published in a local newspaper, respectfully outed Irving as the creative force behind the pen name Geoffrey Crayon. So Henry, who was the reviewer, he's like, no, Washington, I'm going to tell everyone that it's you, not this Geoffrey Crayon. Now, the sketchbook soon made its way to England's literary base and received just as much praise. The book earned Irving the title of the finest British writer produced by America. Cool. Critics particularly enjoyed Irving's elegant and humorous vernacular, and most agreed that the third story of the book's 6th installment, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, was the collection's crown jewel. Now, since it first caught the public's attention in 1820, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow continues to be one of the most enduring ghost stories in America. Like any influential piece of literature, its tale's been adapted repeatedly and brought to life in numerous ways. It has even inspired the naming of several towns and villages across the US. Yep. So, in terms of pop culture, the first known on-screen adaptation was the 1922 silent film, The Headless Horseman. And that was the first on-screen one. But then one of the most popular iterations was 1999's Sleepy Hollow, which was directed by Tim Burton. Some of you might know him from A Christmas Cat. No, what's the Christmas one?
Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah, he did Edward Scissorhands. Didn't he?
Nightmare
He did it.
Christmas.
That's the one, The Nightmare Before Christmas. That was what I was thinking. Did he do Beetlejuice? Nah.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Corpse Bride, did he
Corpse
do?
Bride, yeah. And
Sweeney
he did
Todd?
a Batman. Didn't he do a Batman?
Did the first 2 Batman.
First 2 Batmans. Well, yeah. So he's pretty cool. And Johnny Depp starred as Ichabod Crane. But instead of Ichabod being a teacher, he was a skeptical policeman. And Christina Ricci?
I say Richie.
I say Richie? Okay. I say Richie too. So Christina Ricci as Crane's love interest, Katrina Van Tassel. Now, it had, when this came out, excuse me, it had mixed reviews from critics, but it earned $207 million worldwide. So it did okay. And it also won an Oscar for Best Art Direction. So they did really well. It is a beautiful film to look at. I do enjoy that. Now, another modern pop culture adaptation was a 2013 series called Sleepy Hollow, and it put a bit of a different twist on the story. So the Headless Horseman was actually turned into one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And it transports 19th century characters into a modern time setting. I have not seen that. Have you seen that series?
I started it and
yeah,
it was really good in some bits, but it was, I don't know, just sometimes you don't need to interfere with a really classic, simple story. I wouldn't say, it's a pretty linear story.
Yeah, that's right. It's there. It's been, I get that. And do you know what? It's funny because I feel like you get away with it if you do it well. So if you nail it and you go, I'm going to change this up a bit and I'm going to, adjust a couple of things here and there. But the whole point of the story, from my perspective, is the mystery that surrounds it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is that there's the history in it and the mystery, mystery, well bred, well fed. Like that's what I always say. And well bred, well read, well fed. And that's what it should be. You shouldn't rewrite the story completely and add in new things, because then how are you going to put the four horsemen in the apocalypse and, do all of that?
Story, folks.
Exactly. I know. Now, no matter how many times it's retold, the legend of Sleepy Hollow, with its unique formula of folklore, history, and mystique, remains a Halloween classic and reaffirms our appetite for the supernatural each and every year. The end.
Well done, Kate. You did manage to make it through.
Oh, I didn't think I would there for a moment. That really got me. Tarrytown got me. Tassels got me. Ichabod saying that 960 times. Like, it was just so much was happening.
But it goes to Washington's style of writing. As it was critiqued, it wasn't like Shakespeare or something where it's old-timey or it's relevant to its time. There was an element of fun and silliness,
correct,
and creativity in the way that he wrote, which even at that time they picked up on it. And you still get that. And what I thought Tim Burton did such a great job of in the 99 film version is that there was still, and why Tim Burton was the perfect director for it, is there's still moments in that movie, though it's really scary, it's also like really odd, quirky,
funny,
weird.
kind of weird. Yeah, of course. I agree.
So Washington. So it's perfectly normal for you and I to have laughed as much as we did. In fact, that's a compliment to Irving.
It is a compliment. That is a compliment to you, Irving. It is a compliment to the English as Another Language website from which I took this synopsis, this truncated story. But I really enjoyed not only reading the original story, so knowing of the Headless Horseman from Tim Burton's movie, but then looking at how did he come up with this? This is really cool. So, getting a bit of the history behind it, and its combination of folklore and different countries and cultures and things that they find scary, and it's just interesting. So that is my little tale for you today. And naturally I mentioned some pop culture references, but certainly the Tim Burton film, which is wonderful. And read the story. It's worthwhile. It's not aged well. You can imagine that the language in the 1800s is different to what we use now, just a bit. Sure. But take that with a grain of salt. It's written in a different time.
Yeah, when I lived in the States, the Halloween and that time of year is obviously very popular in that country. I remember I have very vivid memories of being in elementary school and hearing the old original story. I'm sure schools do plays versions of it. Like, everyone was very familiar with the original
tale.
So I grew up with it, which is why I was familiar with it, and I'm sure probably a lot of our US listeners are the same. But we don't. And have I think here.
Too, there was a series of like essays or short stories, particularly in Texas, because you were growing up. That was elementary school in Texas. So The Headless Horseman, or A Strange Tale of Texas, was the other name, and it was written by Mayne Reid, and they published those in 1865 to 1866. So it went for 12 months, and that was 30 years after the publication of Jeffrey Crayon / Washington Irving. But there's heaps, and I also found an excellent, speaking of Halloween, an excellent costume, which is one of those ones that you put your legs in and it's half a horse, half a person. And this horse is like tiny and it's so comical, but they just put angry eyes on it. So they've tried to make it scary and it's not. So we can put that on the socials because that's the kind of costume I would love to wear, where I'm trying to be spooky but funny at the same time, which is, I think, what Washington was after.
There you go.
What a ledge.
Well done, Kate. That was such a great, unexpected tale. Like I would never have thought that you would do it, but it's a good one to do.
Yeah, I enjoyed learning. I like learning these things. Yeah. This is fun for me.
You and I do have a bit of a, we have very different tastes in some things, but the things that we do share as a commonality is stories based in truth.
Yes.
And finding that the truth, tale is
absolutely
always really fascinating. So what a great one to pick. Well done.
Yay. Kate. No worries. And I think, we should, I know this is, our podcast is called Shit and Bricks and we're all about spoopy things and stuff, but I feel as though, some of our tales are going to be creepier than others. And I love if we can, base what we look at in something that might be a little bit scary or supernatural or weird, but we can still learn.
Yeah.
We can still learn things. I like teaching, so I'll be happy to teach people.
Hence why we always do the phobia and etymology.
Yes. Hooray.
Well, speaking of next week, folks, I am going to do a similar-ish thing to what Kate's done this week. It's funny how we always end up doing
We always do this, yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, Kate, of the true stories that inspired one of my favorite all-time horror movies, The Strangers.
I love this.
And it is fucking freaky as all get up. Sorry for the swearing, but not really.
No, that's okay.
So, yeah. We're going to go back in time and find out what inspired the film The Strangers.
I love it. Let's do it. Whee!
So stay tuned, folks, and please go check out our socials, follow us, subscribe, like, rate, review us. You're on your app right now. All it takes is like 3 seconds. Just scroll across and give us 5 stars.
Yep. Or give us 1, but 5 is preferred.
Yeah.
Lizzie, how many stars do you want, doll? No, pop the kettle on.
Put the compass down.
Lizzie's going to put the kettle on. Yeah, she's popped her compass back in her little waistcoat pocket. She's all right. She said we're running out of Scotch fingers again. She's been eating them the whole episode. But Lizzie, stop it. I love you, Dominic.
Love you too, folks. Love you, Kate.
You, folks, and I'll see you soon. Bye. See you. Bye.